Hey, how's it going everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day and welcome to today's video. So today we're going to be doing a tier list ranking of every single Pokemon Go live in-person event. These include all the Go Tour events, the Safari Zone events, as well as the Go Fest events. And I think these are considered the landmark events in Pokemon Go. Pretty much every year they throw these big events and they're kind of what keeps the game going. They're basically a great way for the community to come together. I'm a big fan of them. I wish Niantic did more of them, and I'm glad that they started doing Go Tour events every year, but I would like to see more. In my personal opinion, it would be great if they were to do these bi-monthly. And of course, the only way they could pull that off is if they were to experiment a little bit, and I'm going to be talking about how they've been doing that lately through this video. But yeah, let's actually jump right into it. Let's rank every single one of these in-person events. We're going to start off with the classic Safari Zones. Now, the reason why I'm not putting every single individual Safari Zone in this video is because that would take forever. They did a lot of these Safari Zone events. I think at one point they were doing 3 per year. And I really enjoyed them. I thought they were really cool. I thought they were very unique, and it was a quick and great way for them to do like a nice in-person event. And I really enjoyed them. I went to one specifically, and I do miss them. I think Niantic could do a lot of things in Pokemon Go that are very similar to the old Safari Zone events, but of course, they need to adapt. And I really do think with one of the entries that are on this list, they are doing exactly that. But where am I going to put Safari Zone? I'm going to actually put this in the A tier, mainly because I really do think they were a very good positive for Pokemon Go when they were still around. And I do miss them. So yeah, they're going to be a solid A tier. Now next, let's talk about City Safari events. These are kind of like the new version of Safari Zones, and I'm actually going to put these in the A tier as well. City Safaris are like Safari Zones, but they're very different in that they're more about the city-wide gameplay. The thing is, with Safari Zones, they were kind of like miniature Pokemon Go Fest, so they still happened at specific venues in specific cities, but when it comes to the City Safari events, it's more about the entire city itself. So Niantic doesn't need to go out there, they don't need to set up any venues, they basically just turn it on for a specific city for anyone who buys the ticket, and they experience a city-wide gameplay event. I really like that format. I really think it's genius, mainly because last year when they did Pokemon Go Tour in Las Vegas, as well as the Go Fest event in New York and all of the various cities, they had a component of it where you would go out and play in the city. I really did enjoy that aspect of those events, and I really felt like for them to do City Safaris, which is basically one event that's that exact format, I think it's a great idea. So I hope Niantic continues to do them, and in my opinion, it would be really cool if they were to do it bi-monthly in different cities. That way, everyone in the world has a chance to experience a live in-person event, and I think the effort that it requires to pull that off is not necessarily that daunting, so I really hope Niantic pulls it off. Next up, let's go over all the Go Tour events, starting off with the very first one that we had in 2020. This was for the Kanto region, and in my opinion, this was an S tier event. This was insanely good. I really felt like when it came to this Go Tour event, it was executed greatly. The first one was really good. I really enjoyed the first one. Of course, it was during the pandemic, so there was a lot of remote play involved, which I think is something that helped this event, but I really did enjoy it. I thought it was very intense. The fact that you had to catch one of every single Kanto Pokemon within the event period in order to get some special rewards. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It required you to do a lot of coordinating with other players because if you pick a certain version, you won't get certain Pokemon. It was very reminiscent of the old Pokemon games, and overall, it felt like a solid rush, and I really enjoyed it. But next, let's go over the second Go Tour event that we had, which happened in the year 2022, and this was for the Johto region, and I'm actually going to put this in the A tier. Now, it was basically the same exact format as the first Go Tour event, but the only difference is, of course, there's a lot less Johto Pokemon than there is Kanto Pokemon. And I felt like it was okay. Like, it was still a lot of fun, and it still had a lot of the same elements as the first Go Tour event, but because there are a lot less Pokemon that you needed to catch, it didn't feel like you were being as rushed as you were in the first Go Tour event, which I felt like a lot of that excitement was missing. But in general, I still thought it was a solid event, and they handled all of the content really well. Next up, let's move on to the next one, which was last year's Go Tour event, and this one was for the Hoenn region. Now, this one I'm actually going to put in the B tier. The reason why I say that is because they did switch it up a little bit since the pandemic had just ended. They actually threw a live event as well as a global event. And they kind of cheapened out on the global event for the sake of the live event, which I thought was a very bad mistake. But the live event had its own issues as well. There was a lot of technical issues, the venue did not really handle the amount of players properly, but I still thought it was really cool. I thought it had a lot of the same luster of a regular Pokemon Go Fest, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was phenomenal, and it was a lot of fun to meet up with a lot of trainers that I haven't seen in a while as well. So yeah, I will say that it's a solid B tier event, and I think if it wasn't for a lot of certain issues, it would have been a solid A tier. But now let's move on to this year's Go Tour event, which was for the Sinnoh region. Now this one, I'm going to put in the C tier. Now the reason why I would put this in the C tier is simply for the fact that we really did not get a lot of legendary Pokemon, and when it came to the global event, it was definitely the worst out of the 4 that we've had so far. I really felt like this was a huge step down from last year's Go Tour event. I did not attend Los Angeles, so I do not know how things went there. I did hear that it was very positive, so maybe that's why I'm going to rank it as a C tier rather than like a D or trash tier. But yeah, I really felt like for the global event, it was incredibly lackluster. It did not feature a lot of exciting Pokemon, and I felt like they could have handled it a lot better. This was also the first time we had a Go Tour event where every single Pokedex entry was not available. And that is of course because we still do not have Manaphy, Phione, and Arceus in the game, and it would have been really nice if they were for this event. But I digress, it was still a lot of fun in certain ways, and I really do hope there was a lot of positive lessons learned. But now let's move on to all the Pokemon Go Fests, and I really have to tell you, these are all very fun events, but I felt like they were not perfect. But there were some that came really close. But let's start off with the very first one, which happened here in Chicago over at, I think, 2017. This one is going to be a trash tier. Let's be real here. This was the first time they threw an in-person event, so there was a lot of things that they were just not ready for. It was a total disaster. Like, let me tell you, first and foremost, it took about 2 hours to get into the venue, and then when you got into the venue, you had no cell signal for the entire duration of the event. There was not anything special in-person activities. The habitats were very poorly made. Yeah, this was a terrible event, and, you know, we have to give Niantic some grace here. They didn't know what they were doing. This was the first time they were trying this. They did not know how they were supposed to do it, but I really felt like there could have been a lot more preparation, and yeah, overall, it was probably the only trash tier event that I'm going to be talking about. And yeah, for anyone that attended that Go Fest, they would know it was awful. And we really thought they wouldn't do it again. It was actually quite surprising that they were so committed to doing another Go Fest. Which leads us to the second one, which was in 2018. This one I'm going to put in the B tier, mainly because it felt like it was a massive step up from the first Go Fest. They actually did a lot of things that players wanted them to do. They corrected a lot of the mistakes that they made, and I felt like it was actually really good. If it wasn't for this second Go Fest, we probably wouldn't have Go Fest right now. It was actually a big success, and I actually think Niantic did a lot of positive things. But of course, it was still in the early stages of this event, so I felt like it was lacking a lot of content. But in general, I will say it is a solid B tier. Moving right along, let's go to the next Go Fest, which I'm actually going to put in the same tier. The reason for that is because it was more of the same. Like, they really did not iterate too much. Like, even if you look at the logos, they're pretty much identical. Yeah, I really did not think they did much with this Go Fest. It was basically almost exactly the same event, just featuring different Pokemon. So because of that, I felt like it was a little boring. They could have tried some new things, but instead, yeah, unfortunately, we're going to have to put it in the B tier for that reason. Now let's move on to 2020. This is the Go Fest, of course, during the pandemic, and this was actually the first global Go Fest, and I'm actually going to put this in the A tier. This one was actually a lot of fun. I really did enjoy this Go Fest. Actually, I'm going to put this in the S plus tier. The reason why I say that is because for this particular Go Fest, I feel like because of the pandemic and the pressures for them to do a global event, they went incredibly all out. Like, they had 2 days of event festivities, and for the first day, there was a lot of catching, there was a lot of shiny hunting, there was a lot of raiding, like both Dialga and Palkia were in raid battles, I think Giratina as well. It was insane. There was just so much raiding and so much gameplay, and I really enjoyed it. I really was surprised that they pulled it off, considering that the game was under the pandemic, and it was impossible for players to go out and play. But they pulled it off. They did it in flying colors. I really felt like this was probably the only good Go Fest, aside from another one, which I'm going to get into. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I think it's well deserving of being at the upper echelons of this tier list. And then next, let's move on to the next one. This is going to be the one in 2021. This one's going to be an A tier. I did enjoy it. It was another pandemic era Go Fest, but I really felt like they could have done more. I think the only reason why this one was fun was because there was a lot of remote raiding, and I feel like that's what made this event a lot of fun. I also enjoyed the fact that a lot of people were still enjoying it. I think they did some cool things with Meloetta, and it was kind of at the tail end of the pandemic, so more people were out and about playing, and they were being more comfortable with it. So I do think there was a lot of positives with this particular Go Fest, and it's kind of why it's a step up from the first two, or the first 3 Go Fests that we already talked about. And then now let's move on to 2022. This one is a little bit infamous because I think a lot of players were expecting more. And unfortunately, they did not deliver. So I'm actually going to put this in the B tier, mainly because as an event, it was still really good. I felt like there was a lot of good things with this particular Go Fest. And because of that, I really can't put it in a lower tier. I still think it was what it was supposed to be, a live in-person event. But yeah, I just feel like a lot of people were missing out on the pandemic bonuses. They felt like this was kind of them going back to the norm, and players just simply did not want that. So I really do think this Go Fest could have been a lot better, but at the same time, I still think they did the bare minimum. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, but yeah, they could have done a lot more. That's going to be a solid B tier. And then finally, let's talk about last year's Go Fest. I did both the global Go Fest as well as the one in New York City. And let me tell you, this one was phenomenal. This is going to be another S+ tier event. I personally really enjoyed this event. It was kind of like a homecoming event for me, mainly because there was a lot of people who I haven't seen in almost 5 years, like Jay Kim. I was really excited to play Pokemon Go Fest like how it used to be, and they really brought back that classic feeling. And at the same time, they did something new where they had half of the event be a city-wide experience, and that was actually phenomenal. I think New York City was the perfect venue to try out this new format, and I really do hope for future Go Fests they continue to do it, because I am a massive fan of them doing some very specific event stuff. Like, they had it at I think it was Rikers Island. I forgot the name of the island already, but they had it in an island in New York City, and it was a lot of fun. They did a lot of cool things with habitats. They did some really unique stuff this time around compared to other in-person Go Fests. And then they had you go out into New York City, and I personally thought they did a lot of really good things. I think in terms of a technical point of view, they were just on top of it. And yeah, it was a very solid event. You really can't complain or argue that it wasn't. And I really wish I went to the other ones into the other cities, because I heard they were really good as well. But yeah, overall, I think this list is pretty accurate. I would say that when it comes to the S+ tier events, it's definitely going to be 2020 for the sake of the remote gameplay as well as just the sheer amount of content. I mean, for crying out loud, we had this whole Team Go Rocket Day the next day after, and that was how you got Victini. I felt like that by itself could have been Go Fest and it would have been fine, but we basically had a 2-for-1 deal with that Go Fest. It was just so much fun. And then when it comes to the last year's Go Fest, I think because of the citywide gameplay aspect of it, that's also what makes it an S+ tier, and I think that's pretty accurate. It's well deserving of being at the top of this list. And then for everything else, it's going to be debatable. I think some people will have rose tinted glasses for some of these events and they would rank them higher or lower. I think this is pretty accurate, and this is mainly based on my own personal experiences, but Yeah, I just kind of want to know what you think. Like, what is an event that you would rank higher or lower based on this list? I would definitely like to know because I'm very curious, because there's a lot of people who joined up in Pokemon Go way after some of these events had already happened. So I'm wondering what you all think regarding some of the events that you experienced. And then of course, for veteran players like myself, I would like to know how you rank them down below as well. So make sure you share your personal rankings in the comments below, and let's have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it to this point in the video. If you ended up enjoying it, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to every single patron on my Patreon. You all make this channel content possible. If you want to support the Jinsula channel, the easiest way you could do so is by clicking on the links in the description below. One of them will take you to my Patreon, and if you become a paid Patreon member, you get a permanent spot on my in-game Pokemon Go friends list. So if you want to interact with me in some way, like with remote raids or the friendship system, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. All of my patrons get priority when it comes to remote raid invites. So if you want to raid with me, then make sure you become a patron. And if you want to support my channel in a different way, you could do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula, and I'm on the platforms that you see on screen. And yeah, with that said, that's going to be it. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.